Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Brittany and I like to explore the tools, systems, and ideas that show up in the photography world. Sometimes that means testing apps, and sometimes, like today, it means pausing to ask and discuss, what is this and do we even need it? If that sounds interesting, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel. I want to talk about something that seems pretty straightforward on the surface: mobile apps for tracking golden hour. Lately, I've been digging around the App Store looking into some golden hour photography apps because I want to do a quick and fun comparison video. But when I started thinking a bit more about it, I kind of fell into my own little rabbit hole of wondering, what's the point of these? If we can just Google or check our phone's weather app and work out the golden hour window from there, do we really need a dedicated app? And what are they actually offering that a quick search or a little math doesn't? I'm not here to decide whether these apps are good or bad. I'm just genuinely curious. Because if multiple developers have taken the time to build full apps at all different levels of complexity around this little window of light and put them out there for photographers to use, maybe there's more going on than just telling time. That's why I wanted to approach this as more of a discussion. Now, a lot of what I'm sharing today is just my opinion, my thoughts on these apps, and the role they might play in a photographer's workflow. I mostly wanted to open up a conversation about how they're used and maybe even put them on the radar for folks who didn't know they existed. Because honestly, I hadn't really heard of this app type until I started looking around through the App Store. If you see things differently than what I'm chatting about, that's totally cool. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I'm always open to hearing other perspectives. So, before we get too deep into the why behind these apps, let's take a second to talk about golden hour itself, what it is, why it's such a big deal in photography, and why so many of us try to plan around it. Golden hour gets a lot of attention in photography circles, and for good reason. It's that soft, directional, glowy light that makes everything feel a little more cinematic. For portraits, it's flattering. For landscapes, it can be dramatic. For weddings, it's often the moment that couples look forward to the most. I mean, they do look forward to everything about the wedding day, of course, but a lot of couples plan with their photographer for their portraits to happen around golden hour. But the tricky part is that golden hour isn't a fixed time. It shifts depending on where you are, the time of year, and even your elevation. Sometimes it can last an hour, sometimes it's over in 15 minutes, and unless you're really tuned into your local conditions, it's easy to misjudge or miss entirely. So I think that's where these apps really save the day. They're not just dropping a sunset time on the screen and leaving us to figure out the rest. They're actually calculating that golden window based on location, date, and the current conditions. That kind of detail can really help, especially when golden hour can be a little fickle. Some of these apps even go a step further, letting you set up notifications or plan ahead for shoots at a later date. And depending on how you work, that might be exactly the kind of tool that adds value to your shooting. That got me thinking not just about what these apps can do, but what photographers actually want from something like this. Beyond just showing us the golden window, what kind of support are we really looking for? The thing is, these apps aren't all built the same. Some are super simple, others are surprisingly advanced, and a few try to do a little bit of everything. It's kind of like Goldilocks and the mobile apps. For some people, all that's needed or wanted is something simple. If I were to use one of these apps, I think all I'd need is the start and end of golden hour, maybe with a little countdown or a quick widget I can glance at on my home screen. But for other people, there might be a bit more planning needed. Maybe you want to know when golden hour will hit farther in the future at a specific location, especially if you're planning to travel for a session or you're timing something like a proposal or an elopement. You might want to compare days, track how the light shifts throughout the week, or set reminders so you can stay on top of your timing. And then there's the more technical side. Sun path overlays, AR visualization, elevation aware timing. These aren't features everyone needs, but for some photographers, especially landscape shooters, travel photographers, or anyone working in unfamiliar light, that kind of detail could actually make a huge difference. It helps you predict not just when the light will happen, but where it's going to fall, which completely changes how you approach the shot. Honestly, the more I think about it, I could have really used sun pathing when shooting destination weddings. I kind of have the sun's movement down in my area, but when going to a new place, especially a beach location, yeah, pathing the sun could have saved me a lot of research and imposter syndrome panic. What really makes a tool useful comes down to how we define usefulness in the first place. At the beginning of this video, I asked what I thought was a simple question: why do golden hour apps even exist when we can just Google? But now, after sitting with it for a bit, I realized it's not that simple, and I think the answer is, it depends. Remember, I've never actually used any of these apps, and I didn't even realize they existed. Back when I was shooting more regularly, I just bookmarked timeanddate.com and figured out the golden window from there. It wasn't fancy, but it's what I had, and it worked well enough. That said, if I'd known these apps were out there, there's a very good chance I would have downloaded one. Having an app that's readily available on my phone with notifications and location-based timing geared specifically for this magical time of day, that is extremely tempting. It's a niche tool for sure, but sometimes that's exactly what makes it valuable. It doesn't try to do everything, it just takes a task that used to involve a few steps and wraps it into something quick, easy, and purpose-built. Not everyone needs that kind of shortcut, but for the people who do, it's a small convenience that helps with a small to medium-sized hurdle. Of course, that all depends on how well the app actually does its job. If it saves time, removes guesswork, or helps you feel more prepared, that's a win. But if it adds steps, feels clunky, or gets bogged down with intrusive ads, then maybe it's not solving anything you weren't already handling just fine on your own, which is something we'll touch on more in a later video when comparing some of these tools. These apps aren't here to replace what already works. They're here to support different ways of working. And for photographers who want a little more structure or clarity around golden hour, they might be exactly the kind of tool that makes a meaningful difference. That's how I'm seeing it right now, but I'd really love to hear your thoughts. What makes a tool like this useful to you? Is it about speed, accuracy, reminders, or just having a dedicated space for your planning? Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious what works for the different kinds of photographers. And that about does it for this chat about golden hour mobile apps and the value that they might be adding to the photo world. I thought this was an interesting little pocket of photography tech that's kind of easy to overlook. And if nothing else, maybe this gets you thinking about how you like to approach golden hour and whether a tool like this would actually help or just get in your way. I'll be diving into a few of these golden hour apps in more detail very soon, so if you're curious about how they compare, that's coming next. In the meantime, I hope you'll consider liking, subscribing, and hitting that little bell so you can be alerted whenever I release my videos. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next one.